When will you be satisfied?
Oh, you should never be satisfied, right? And so that's the thing, is that it's a paradox between being able to be present and more satisfied. Like, you should be more satisfied than anybody you'd see on the street staring at a wall, and paradoxically, the most unsatisfied. It's all, the Zen truth is always, there's the flip side of the coin. So you can sit there and, you can just sit and meditate and take a deep breath and be absolutely present and not need anything. And then you can realize that you're in a physical experience. God has created all this stuff, and that you're sitting there looking at a freaking wall. So get up and let's go, okay? That's where LFG expression comes in. Let's go. And what that means is that you're not doing this from a standpoint of needing the photo. You're not doing this from a standpoint of competing with the Joneses. You're doing it because it's inspiring you. You're doing it because our great mission on this earth is to witness God's creation. That's one component, but also to add to life. So we witness God's creation. When you're sitting out deep in Glacier Park in Montana, and you're in some deep, way up in the mountains, a grizzly bears just walk by and look you dead in the eye, and you're way up in the mountains, and you're looking down on some glacier lake, and you're sitting there in deep presence, deeply connected to nature, and the waves of presence are moving through you. Maybe in my case, doing a video, which is adding to creativity, making creative videos that in a million years I could never do from home. Can't do that from home. Can't do that sitting in your little hamster cage. And that's where you say to yourself, okay, I can meditate in the hamster cage. I can play with my kids in the hamster cage. I can, cuddle with my significant other in the hamster cage. But I don't want to just be stuck here. So in other words, like, everything's in a different paradigm, okay? Like, let me put it to you this way. I thought that I was beating the matrix by doing the best parties, getting the best parties, dating the best people, making a ton of cash, making my first $2 million by 26, and so on and so forth. I thought that I was beating the matrix by doing that. I didn't realize that I was still a slave in the matrix. I was still playing a role within the power structure. And this is why the Bible and the Gospels are so important, and they need to be reread every day. If you can, reread them every day. Because the main component of the Gospels is the rejection of the power structure. It is the understanding that the power structure collectivizes dark energy. Okay, it pulls in dark energy. And that just because you're raising in a hierarchy in the power structure doesn't mean that you're spiritually awake. It is via the absolute rejection of the system, the absolute awareness that the people at the top of that system are satanic. It is from that basic level understanding that you connect to God. That is why that is the fundamental principle of Christianity, is clouding on virtue signaling, clouding and trolling the establishment, okay? Clowning and trolling the establishment is the will of God. Read that carefully. Go reread the Bible. Jesus is the greatest troll of the establishment that ever existed, okay? Jesus is he trolled them so hard, they killed him, okay? He was the beginning of cancel culture. They trolled him so hard he got canceled, okay? So, yeah, he got canceled and then he came back. So, okay, he just kept trolling. He just kept trolling, and then the book of Acts, and they just keep trolling. And the trolling continues to this day. The trolling just keeps paying forward. So that's the thing, is it's via that absolute rejection of the system because you realize that within that system you're still asleep. So it is via the rejection of the system and the absolute saying no. Just to repeat after me, say no. Say that. Say no. So when it was saying no to that system, it's in the repudiation of that system and saying no that you actually have that birth of the soul. Okay, you cannot have a birth of the soul by saying yes to the system. That doesn't mean being a hipster and rejecting the system. That doesn't mean rejecting every mainstream expert. It doesn't mean that anyone in the system couldn't be doing good things. There's many incredible people in the system that are doing great things. But it means that there's an understanding that the more that somebody is connected to power, the more likely that they are to be a high target for that sick energy, because sick energy likes a high value target. And that is why when you look in the pupil, often to people that are very, very powerful, they look like the bug man or the bug woman. You can see that exact look, like that woman from Theranos, those bug eyes. Go look at the woman from Theranos, the bug eyes, and you've got to be able to recognize the bug eyes. And the bug eyes comes because if you're absolutely saturated in high vibe energy, as we jokingly refer to it in like the woo-woo new age community, okay? If you're steeped in that, your gaze is laser-like and very, very steady, and your energy is very, very on point and very, very steady. Then if you're somewhere in the middle, your energy tends to fluctuate. But if you completely commit to darkness, then you actually get confidence, you get power, and then you get those laser-like eyes back, but they look like a shark. It's a shark-like look. So there's a look of somebody that has, what you'd sort of refer to as enlightenment, Holy Spirit, high vibe energy, whatever you want to call it. I really don't care what you want to call it. And that's a very, very steady look with energy just flowing through them. But then you also see that with people in darkness. The difference is, at a low vibe, you can amass power more quickly and easily, okay? Because what you're doing is, darker energy is a more concentrated form of power. So it's more easy to take in. So you can have a very contracted awareness and a very ego-driven awareness, and you can still take in dark energy, okay? I don't mean to be weird here and go dark, but I'm just being honest with you. So then from there, of my take on this, from there, then what you have is high vibe energy, which requires you to be very present, which means a very diffused awareness. This is why in the Bible, biblical teaching, giving is so utterly important. Forgiveness is so utterly important. Helping even your enemies is so utterly important. Not contributing reactive energy is so utterly important, because what this does is it expands awareness outside of your head, and as a result, now you can take in that light, okay? That's why they say that, you can see the light in the eyes. It says that right in the Sermon on the Mount, okay? So basically, these are the Sermon on the Mount, or the biblical teachings, okay, the Gospels. Basically what that is, it's the classic midwit meme, okay? So the midwit meme is like Bible for dumb people. Book says true. I'm dumb, okay? Then people in the middle are like, but there's all these other religions, they're all gonna go to hell. And, like you're saying that like Noah's Ark actually happened like 6,000 years ago, and you're gonna sit there trying to do archaeological digs for this. Like, and again, I'm not saying it's not true, but I'm just saying like the focus becomes on this like fundamentalism of like determining what happened or what didn't. At the highest level of intelligence, you're just getting the message. You began the conversation by saying, how do you get motivated? Remember that? How do you get motivated, right? So I'm showing you, remember I said motivation is entry level? I'm showing you transcendent motivation, transcendent execution. So on a level where you're not having to, motivation is entry level because it means how do I get out of apathy? Ego motivation is mid-level, is how do I compete with everybody else? Transcendent motivation, transcendent execution is when you're so in the zone that you don't run out of energy. You actually gain energy from work, gain energy from being productive, and you get out there, you witness God's creation, and you add to life. And so what happens is that in spiritual growth, what we'll say is you've got to worship the creator over the creation. And this is a major, major component of life. This is why we say no to drugs, why we say no to alcohol, because again, you're worshiping the drug. The drug is a false god. Marijuana is a false god. Okay, whatever it is that you're erotically connecting into, when you're high, you're connecting into the weed. Oh, you're connecting into it, right? It's like when you're wasting time and you're looking at TikTok or things like that, you're sitting in there and you're connecting into that energy. But we've got to say to ourselves, what is the energy of life? What is high vibe energy? What is the energy of God? What does that mean? That expansive energy. You want to almost think of it like as a simple metaphor, as like a tear. God is like a tear in the veil, okay? It's a tear in the veil. And it's like a fount of energy coming through, planets being created, galaxies being created, right? We think that Earth is big, a city is big. That's not true, right? Go look at the galaxy. It's beyond your wildest imagination. But even though the galaxy is so massive and we're such little tiny insignificant fleas by comparison, we're actually not as insignificant as we seem. We are and we aren't at the same time. Just like I said, you can be satisfied staring at a wall, but you can also realize, get up from the damn wall. Well, in the same way, you can realize we're insignificant. Absolutely. You go look at videos of the galaxy. We are absolutely insignificant, but we can simultaneously realize that we are absolutely significant. Because we're intelligent life, we have the gift of consciousness. Say the gift of consciousness.
The gift of consciousness.
Absolutely amazing, right? And remember that the reason why God has allowed good and evil is because if you're God, you're lonely. And so when you're going to create other life, you can't just make it good by default, because there has to be the choice. You have to survive the temptation, and you have to make the choice to connect to life, because if you don't make that a conscious choice, then God is lonely. Everybody understand this? God is all alone unless you have free will. So you have to choose life and to connect to the energy of life by your conscious free will in spite of temptation. And that comes through a process of connecting to life and the energy of life, and via the process of surrender, or your consciousness means nothing. And it is via that connection to your core essence that your core essence actually grows and expands. And if you fail to do so, again, we have mind, body, and soul, which you might also almost call ego, body, and soul. The ego at death of the body dies. The body at death of the body by default dies. But the core essence, that energy, that is something that transcends the body and the ego. So you've got to say to yourself, right now, basic simple thought experiment, if you look at what you're erotically connecting to, for most of us, 99.9% of our thoughts and mental energy goes into biological drives, like I'm hungry, I'm horny, I'm tired, I'm thirsty, I'm sleepy, I have energy, whatever, right? Ego gratification, am I cool, am I not cool, what do they think of me? Social conditioning, oh, well, the social conditioning says this, so I've got to just repeat it. It could be things like addictions, right? Your body has different addictions in it. Addictions to different thoughts, synaptic pathway activations, addiction to different food, drugs, etc., which is all autopilot. And then we also have sort of a status map in our mind of what kind of thoughts is somebody of our status is allowed to have. You know, if you're somebody who's a 5 out of 10 in status in your mind, you're allowed to have 5 out of 10 thoughts, and so on and so forth, right? Also, emotions are highly addictive. Are you addicted to being happy or sad? So all of these things that we have are basic level addictions that take us away from the present moment. They collapse that inflow of present energy, right? So in other words, when you're hungry and you're splurging on food, it's hard to be present when you're splurging on food. You know, it's hard to be present when you're in social conditioning. It's hard to be present when you're in your ego. So things that build the core essence, things that build the soul, is actually via discomfort, right? And again, that is where everybody has their cross to bear. It's via that discomfort that we have the birth of the soul. So basic level, simple things that you can do to get this. I've talked about this before, but I'm bringing it in the context of this talk to reinforce it. If you go do a burning hot Russian banya as an example, okay? Burning, burning, burning hot. That actually causes you to become deeply present. Then go jump in a cold plunge. You will get high off of it. It will cause you to become deeply, deeply present when you go jump into a cold plunge. Do viciously, viciously, viciously hard work. Why do you think I often run these seminars right in the dirt? I run them until my body's running out. I do that with the specific intention of getting deeply, deeply present. So very, very hard work, and is a giving kind of work, actually allows you to feed your core essence. Things like, a big one is getting insulted and not feeling the need to answer back. Okay, like letting someone diss you and not needing to defend yourself, or taking reputational damage and not needing to defend yourself is massive, okay? And here's how you know. Think about somebody hurting your reputation. Think about you fighting back. Not good. Now think about accepting it. Accepting it. Why? Because your soul can never be destroyed. Attack the body, doesn't matter. Attack the ego, doesn't matter. Connects you to your soul. Helping an enemy connects you to your soul. This is all written in the Bible. It's all right in there. But again, people are reading it as a fundamentalist reading. What the person say? Can I repeat it? Jesus, my Lord and Savior, and so on and so forth. They're not even looking at the underlying truths. So somebody deeply unconscious is parroting this while being unconscious, having not had that second birth of the soul. So it's one of these things where you've got to be looking at this from a standpoint that deprivation, why is food fasting such an integral part of spiritual awakening? Why is meditation, where you sit there staring at a wall, not doing anything? Why is it you get more high off staring at a wall than getting everything you want? Because getting everything you want is still in the world of duality. So people that are thinking that I need to get everything I want to feel good, and that was your question, and it's the paradox of that. Oh, well, when is enough enough, right? And it's like, well, are you just in the physical body? Are you just in the ego? But what's misunderstood is that we do spiritual bypassing. So either A, we say, I don't want to put in the work, so therefore I'm going to pretend that I'm spiritual, but I'm not even in my core essence anyway. I'm in my ego and I'm in my physical intelligence, but I'm going to pretend that I'm enlightened by being apathetic and being below the desires of my body and ego. I'm good, at the lowest level possible, I'm going to say that I'm spiritual. But then in addition, you remember I said motivation is entry level? Well, in reality, being present is entry level. Let that land. Okay, it's like, but it's all just about being happy. Happy is a transient state. So it's still the next amusement ride in the park. That feeling of being present is still a transient state. You're not always going to be present all the time. And so it's one of these things where there's that euphoric present vibe that'll kind of come in waves, but there's also an underlying foundation that even in a bad mood, you're not identified with that bad mood. So there's like the foundation of presence, and then there's like the waves of euphoria or joy that you can also achieve with presence still as a foundation. But you can be miserable and still have that present awareness beneath that as a foundation. So coming from that standpoint, from that state of presence, how do you go out and witness God's creation? How do you go out and contribute? How do you go out and expand? How do you go out and get what you want? How do you use the playground that God created to go have joy and expand? So are you doing it? It's the place that it's coming from and what's driving you that's really the determining factor. So are you going out into Montana, deep into the woods? Are you doing that so you can get an Instagram photo to show people and to be able to prove to other people that you did it? Or are you doing that because that's God's creation, you're witnessing it, and you're allowing that to infuse that energy into you to add creativity, add lateral thinking, take that sober psychedelic odyssey, not the weekend warrior psychedelic odyssey of ingesting some substance, but the real psychedelic odyssey that we're intended to have. And then are you out there having that and allowing that to create incredible creativity, think outside the box, and bring that energy back into the world? And then not just letting yourself off the hook and saying, oh, I got super high and I'm going to write a trip report. You didn't watch the Joe Rogan podcast, I love Joe Rogan, but you know my point. But are you actually going to take something that you learned there and monetize that and use that to contribute to the world? And why do I come to the word monetize it? Because you need to monetize it to scale it. And in most cases, so are you going to somehow scale that and get that message out, or that invention out, or that new creation out? And how do you get that out there? And then how do you now participate in the act of creation, and now you're contributing to life? Not from the disconnected from God elites, where you're just sitting there saying, oh, I'm disconnected, and I've got those shark eyes, and I'm just going to put everybody else to sleep and make $1 trillion. And not from a standpoint of being a derper and in the unthinking masses that just wants autopilot, path least resistance, and being numb. Their version of a great weekend is getting crunk, being numb, escaping the pain that comes from the disconnection, but rather more deeply connecting. So now you don't need it. You might make $1 trillion, but you don't need it. Rather, you make the amount of financial abundance in order to fuel your creation, right? And again, this is biblical, and is the idea that, don't worry about tomorrow, that will be handled. You'll have the money that you need as it comes up. Trust yourself. But that also doesn't mean being lazy. It means having self-trust, which then puts you kind of in the pocket of that very present, aware, resourceful state. And then those little resources start coming to you, and then you start working with them. Okay, and that's a very spiritual life, but also a very prosperous life. And this is that core essence of the basic level foundation of values that built what we have today. Because it was not the people that you see running around staring at their phones that built what we had today. Okay, we are the spoiled children generation, most of us, and recipients of the parents that went out and slayed dragons. And remember that America, the idea of America in and of itself, is most likely, on the current trajectory that we're on, it's going to shift geography. It's going to shift postal codes, okay? Because in some ways, you could argue that Hong Kong is more America than America. Okay, pockets of Hong Kong. And be aware that America is not just a geographic region, okay? You don't get to be American just by saying that you live in America. That's not what makes you American, okay? Because everything's changing now. The internet's around, ideas are around. Rather, and these were flawed ideas in the Declaration of Independence, in the Constitution. There was problems with that, deep-rooted problems. But that created a foundation for everybody to be free later when society was ready for it. So they took us as far as they could take us at that time, but it didn't take everybody, did it, right? It didn't make everybody free, did it, right? But it set the foundation to do so. And so the people that did that were flawed, but God's will that entered into those documents, these are holy documents, while flawed, that entered into those documents meant that America is not a land just of a specific region where people have disavowed those core values. America is going to be those last final pockets in the world that understands that freedom is a prerequisite condition for the birth of the soul, and that we cannot be forced to be good by compliance. No different than God can just make people be good and have that be a real soul. So America will become something where people value freedom and value not just being a part of the sick system and reject the system, and these will be pockets of America that will go everywhere throughout the world. So those documents in 1776 that are very holy documents, while flawed deeply, those documents And that underlying idea, that spark of divine creation that entered in that will spread, okay? And that's not just something that spreads to a region. That's something that lives in your heart, okay? And that's something that you share with your children. And your children will have a choice either to reject the system or to be a part of it. And they'll have to be taught that as well. And that's the main thing I tell to my children when I'm dead, because I will be, in their lifetime, I will be dead. And they'll have to watch these videos. And I can see them and they can't see me. I can see you, you can't see me. Don't let them take your soul. Don't let them have it. I want to be with you on the other side of the veil. I want to be with you there. Don't let them snuff out your soul. And they're going to come to you and they're going to trick you. And they're going to make you think that you can live. I'm not getting crazy here, but I'm dead serious. They're going to make you think that you can live forever in some cloud. I've met Ray Kurzweil. I've met these people. I've coached many of these people. I know what they're doing. And I'm telling you flat out, they're going to make you think that if you download some imprint, that that's your soul. It's not. It's going to snuff you out. Anything that is causing you to go into deep unconsciousness is snuffing you out. It is death. That is why also that you should not be afraid of dying. You should be afraid of never having lived. You should not be afraid of dying. You should be afraid of not waking up. I'm telling you. And it said this is also biblical, but people have forgotten about this, okay? They're just reading this fundamentalist thing, and then they get caught up in that. Be afraid of that which is going to snuff out your soul. I'm telling you. And you have to understand, I've had years and years and years to dissect social dynamics. I see things on a level that most people don't see them because I have decades under my belt, like a nature tracker that can tell you where a deer is. I'm like a nature tracker for a lot of different things. And I have a very, very deep understanding of human nature. I look at humans very, very deeply. This is all that I do all day, every day. I can see what's running people. I know where they're coming from. I know what's running them, and I know what energies are inhabiting them. I know what things they welcomed into themselves. Don't welcome those things into yourself. The way that this happens is when you just focus on egoic gratification, physical gratification only, rather than as being a part of your temple that's important as an indicator light, like I'm hungry, great indicator light. But when it gets to the point that it's cut off that inflow of present energy, like what Eckhart Tolle talks about, Tao Te Ching talks about, again, these idiots, these fundamentalist idiots that somehow think that the Tao Te Ching is in conflict with the Bible or things like that because they are just fundamentalists and they're in a cult. They don't get it. These universal truths that you see in holy documents that, again, people are so far past this, they don't get it. You've got to go back to them. When you go back to things like the Tao Te Ching, you will feel like the things that you're looking at and studying are absurd and idiotic. You will realize that you have, I don't even want to use the word wasted your life, but you're like this car that's in the mud, shooting around a bunch of mud shooting everywhere, and is spinning in circles, and there's this flurry of activity, and nothing's actually going on at all. Nothing's happening at all. It's just a bunch of stuff happening, and it's just transient, and nothing's actually progressing. And so in reality, having no fear of death, and knowing that death is your liberation, is actually you choosing life. But in the future, people that say that will be viewed as a death cult because you'll have the option to stay alive and you'll be scared because that will be a leap into the unknown. And then even this video will become forbidden, okay? Because it's encouraging people to like not take the live forever thing, okay? But they don't realize that what's going on, you have to understand. Imagine a heroin junkie could just press a button and get a hit of heroin. What would they do over time? What would happen if a heroin junkie could press a button and get heroin? What would happen? They just do this and this and this, right? Let's say they didn't even die, but they keep doing this, right? What happens if from a thought, just a thought, they release heroin? Then what happens? Here's how this goes on. Imagine a heroin junkie has a thought, and that's releasing heroin. What would begin to happen to the synaptic superhighways in the mind? It would eventually, create a flywheel effect of releasing heroin to where the person's awakening would be snuffed out. Their soul would be snuffed out because it would go like that. Because it'd go heroin, yes, heroin, yes, and it'd do that. And now you can't think anymore because you're just unconscious, okay? That same effect happens with the ego. That same thing snuffs out your soul. That same effect can be happening just from TikTok, fast food, ego gratification, trash talk, triangulation, time wasting. That's all happening now. You're already in the heroin flywheel now. You're already in there now. So you've got to be actively disrupting the flywheel. How do we disrupt the flywheel? That, again, proselyte giving, helping an enemy, food fasting, sauna, cold plunge, hiking in nature, hard work. Any of these things are interrupting the flywheel. And then when you can read books like Eckhart Tolle and learn to get present and learn to recognize get a palate for that kind of energy. What will begin to happen as you do this is it begins to loosen up and create space from the flywheel. Okay, and the flywheel is parasitic because as the flywheel goes, it creates a parasitic consciousness on top of your core consciousness. By the way, okay, because what happens is that if the flywheel needs certain effects, like it needs a certain type of feedback in order to keep the flywheel going, let's say it was a victim flywheel, that person will be annoying to him to get him to act bad to maintain the flywheel. So now the person is deeply, deeply, deeply unconscious and not connected to their core will. They also don't have discernment because the parasite will alter perception actively so that they can't see reality anymore. So when you cannot access a transcendent state independently, what winds up happening is that you don't have access independently to a transcendent state. Then what happens is that you lose your will, your core consciousness is snuffed out, and your discernment is snuffed out. And you're not even a human being anymore. You're basically this parasitic entity, and it's snuffed out your soul. And so there's a seed in you that exists, a presence that you want to be feeding and acting through. And this is what allows you to speak without thinking that much. It allows you to project energy. It allows you to, it does things that I can't even say here, but it's going to do things that I'm not even going to cheapen it by explaining it to you. Just go see it for yourself. Don't take it from me. Just go see it for yourself, okay? So that's what it means to really wake up at a high level, is always feeding that expansion, okay? And so you want a different kind of flywheel, which is that you're more connected to your will, you're more connected to your discernment, you're more connected to that expansion. Because the more that you're connected to a transcendent state independently, then the flywheel goes like this, and then that awakening and that kind of aura type vibe thing goes like that, and then you carry yourself as a different human being, and you are reborn. So this is a completely different state of consciousness. Things are going to change dramatically when you do this, and I'd urge everybody to do it. So let's bring it back hilariously to the original question. How do I get motivated? Motivation is entry level. Motivation is how do I go from apathy into a state of action? Then in a state of action, how do I compete? How do I get to a transcendent level of motivation? How do I get to a level of transcendent execution? And how do I witness God's creation? And how do I add to life? And so you become that. Now what's happening is your spirit is being prepared for that next level. Okay, that core essence is being prepared for that which is beyond. That's why I say to my children will see this. My children will not even understand this or even look at this before I'm dead. Okay, I'll be dead, and my children, Vincent, Dylan, Tristan, any kids that I don't know that I have that turn up out of the woodworks, and any kids that I haven't had yet are going to watch this, and they'll see it after I'm dead, and they'll say, who is my father? And I believe, and what's happened is with my children is that I planted seeds in their minds to prepare them. Okay, so they're prepared as great leaders, but they have to make that choice. I can't make that choice for them. You can have 20, 30, 40% influence. You cannot have 100% influence over your child. What do we say about God? God gives the person the choice to be good or to be bad. That's a choice. My children have that in them. My children have never seen me angry a single time. My children have never seen me sick because I've never been sick since my children were born, not even a common cold. They've never seen that. My children have never seen me in any kind of financial scarcity. My children have never seen me anything less than a leader in the room. My children have never seen me, hurt their feelings or be mad at them in any way. And my children have seen travel and prosperity and abundance. And I have continually sat with them and taught them and planted seeds in the mind. And I prepared them for what's coming because I have a deep understanding of that. I don't know exactly what's coming, but I have a general idea of what's coming. And so I planted those seeds in them deeply, deeply in their mind, deep in their psyche and deep in their unconscious, and they're not going to know. But when that time comes and they need it, it's going to pop. And they're going to have resources that are there that are going to allow them to dig deeper, and it's going to allow them to lead with what's coming. So that's what I planted in their mind. And that's what it means also to be a parent. And part of that process of connecting to life is also creating actual life by being a parent and having lots of children. I'd recommend that you have as many children as you can that you can raise properly, and raising them and being that role model for them and learning what those seeds are and planting those seeds in their mind, because we're going to need leaders like that. And we're going to need great, great, great leaders that are not bought in the system and that know that America is not just a geographical region. Because when they take this, then, because when they get this, then we've got to spread out. So that's going to be sort of, the next thing, okay? And so just understanding that core fundamental understanding of freedom as being a necessary prerequisite for the birth of the soul. Why did God give us that ability of free will? Why? Because we have to make the choice. So again, bring it back to motivation. What motivates me? What motivates me is I'm not even here anymore. Okay, I'm not even here. What you think of as me is not even me. I'm not even here anymore. Okay, the basic desires the average person has, as you evolve, you're not going to have those anymore. I have to translate my ideology and ideas like speaking to a child when I'm speaking to an audience. Because I understand this is over the head of the average person. So I'm reaching you at a level of the basics to show you basic level starting points and entry points into the bigger game. Okay, it's an all access pass into a larger game that you can be a part of. And so, as you move up, motivated, not motivated, you're not motivated or not motivated, you just are. Okay, they call that having, doing, being. Have or have not. Or like these poor fools. Are you good looking enough? I became recently single again. And I mean, being back out there, I do nothing in my dating life. I don't even, I can't wait for some of you guys to come out with me. I just do nothing, and it's just on. It's called being. It's the being paradigm. But people think that's a have or have not. You either have the thing or you don't. Then there's the doing paradigm. What's the exact thing that you're doing? Then at a higher level, it's who you're being. At a core level in motivation, when it's who you're being, and you're tapped into that, you don't think about motivation. You resonate with the energy of life, and you take right action. Okay, so we are babies. Okay, there's a lot of really, really dark energy. Okay, and a lot of this dark energy is not as advanced as us, and is not as high in potential as us, but is hijacking us in our infancy. Okay, so we're a little baby souls. We're like little hatchlings, like the little baby Jedis. You know what I'm saying, right? Little kid Jedis. And so we're like little babies just coming in our potential, but we don't even recognize yet what that potential is. But what's happening is that we're beginning to recognize what that potential is, and then a lot of this dark stuff is coming after us and is trying to pull us back from that potential. But we have the ability to do things like the works that we will accomplish collectively as humans. We will do things that are so far past the imagination of our paradigms now. Our children will do things, and their children will do things, and their children will do things, and we will, and our core essence lives forever, and it has the capacity to, if we choose to engage it or not, because it can be snuffed out, and our core essence will go beyond. But the physical bodies that come through this dimension right here have the ability to do things far past our wildest dreams. We will do things that are so beyond the imagination. But that first step is saying no to that sick system, saying no to that automation, saying no to being snuffed out. It will look paradoxically as if what the person is doing is harming themselves by not tapping in that, when in reality they're liberating themselves. But that will be unknown, and only a few people will know that. And this actual realm will be sucked into the pits of hell, likely. But that's not 100% for sure, and that's not written yet. There's still a fork in the road that we can have. There's still a fork in the road before we get swallowed up. So it depends on the extent to, as things get worse, if people are able to see that and adjust quickly. But we're so much in a slumber of derping and autopilot and being numb. We're so much in that slumber and so far out of anybody that could be aware of this or respond to it. We just saw what happened. We saw it right in our face. However, that also means that as evil is growing, in parallel, goodness is growing. Because people have now seen what evil looks like up close, and it's now been exposed. Okay, the mask is off for anybody to see who chooses to see it. And then from there, people can choose to wake up, and they can choose to align to life. Because now all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, there's something going on here, and I know what I don't want to be a part of. And you can choose to align to life. Is everybody here very inspired to align to life?
Yes.
Everybody here feeling very inspired as we wrap this event?
Yes.
You guys had a lot of fun this weekend?
Yes.
I want to thank you guys for being here. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thank you.